how do you go about reconstructing without electronic aids?
Going back to the 40s and 50s, we've actually determined, using the laws of physics, Sir Isaac Newton's laws of motions, basically, how a vehicle interacts with the roadway. When when a vehicle's out of control, they leave tire marks when he's braking. When a vehicle collides with another vehicle, energy is transferred. Basically, we use tire marks, gouge marks, crush damage, all kinds of the different things that happen in a crash. When energy is dissipated, we figure out how the energy is dissipated, how much energy was dissipated. In turn, we can actually determine speeds based off the tire marks, yaw marks, impact damage, all those sort of things go into, based on Sir Isaac Newton's laws of motion. We're able to determine, how a crash occurred, what kind of speeds are involved. So tire marks are the biggest thing.
You're not talking about electronic aids, so you in the division, do you perform measurements where you were?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What were you measuring?
In this case, we're measuring tire marks that we observed on scene from the bus. And these tire marks are what we call side slip tire marks, yaw marks, a lot of times we call them. It's when a vehicle is negotiating a curve, if the vehicle is carrying too much speed, the vehicle either understeer or oversteer, and when it's doing that, the tires are rotating, going around and around like it's supposed to. But because the vehicle has too much speed to negotiate that particular curve, the tires will be rotating, but they'll start side slipping. So it looks kind of like skid marks, but they're not skid marks. The tires are actually rotating, and they create side slip tire marks. And we noticed those type of tire marks or yaw marks. They're on the scene at the bottom of the hill near Sunset Drive, and also towards the top of the hill prior to where the bus struck the pole.
All right. So, Tally Road, you said Sunset is a crossroad.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you talked about the railroad line in the middle. The bus comes to rest at the top or bottom of the hill?
Top of the hill.
Okay. And Sunset is in the avenue where it crosses Tally. Where is that relationship to where the bus came?
It's at the bottom of the hill.
At the bottom of the hill.
It's a
Okay.
couple hundred feet away.
All right. Now, were there particular things through search warrants that electronic aids that were removed or the data was removed from the bus?
That's correct. Yes, sir. We 3 different forms of data.
All right. And what are those?
The first one was video from the onboard video system from the bus. The second set of data would be from the engine control module, ECM. That is an engine control module for heavy vehicles like buses and tractor trailers that monitors conditions with the vehicle. That provides some information. The third set of information was the GPS data.
Okay. In the GPS, we'll go through those individually. GPS data does what for you when you
Basically, just like you would have on your cell phone or in your car, for your GPS device, it can determine how fast you're going using time and distance. It knows where you're at one point, at a particular time, set of time later, like a couple seconds later, you're at a different point. The computer inside the GPS will calculate how fast you're going based on how far you've moved. This vehicle did have a form of a GPS unit in it. However, on this particular one, the sampling rate is really long, whereas like most of your GPS units track with the satellite every second or every couple seconds, this one has a lot longer sampling rate, so it only queries the satellite every, I think, 18 seconds, and I have to look that up.
All right.
So it's a longer sampling rate.
And you said the bus was equipped with video?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Where were the cameras located?
There are 3 cameras on that bus. There is a camera that is mounted above the driver's head, which looks out at the door as students will be entering the bus. It looks directly out at the side. There's a camera at the very front of the bus that looks backwards towards all the students. And there's a camera located at the very rear of the bus that looks forward at all of the students.
Okay, and that information, the video information, GPS, do you preserve that in what manner?
Digital form.
Digital form, okay. And then there was the ECM that you talked about. How is that preserved?
That is also in digital form. We actually, the engine control module is actually a box that's mounted to the side of the engine block on this on the Cummins diesel, and that engine control module we actually hook up to it and read the information that's on it. It's also in digital form.
All right, and I believe the National Transportation Safety Board was on scene for this as well. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Does your investigation parallel theirs or vice versa?
It's
or how do you
independent.
describe it? Independent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were they helpful in obtaining this video?
They were actually in the process of looking at the video themselves. We actually, Investigator Cabot actually obtained copies of the video from the Hamilton County School Board. Then I went back and obtained additional copies of the video from the Hamilton County School Board.
All right. Let's talk about the ECM, engine control module. And again, for those of us without this type of knowledge, what is that?
Engine control module is just that. It's an electronic aid that controls the parameters of the engine and monitors the parameters of the engine, what's happening with it. It's mainly a maintenance device for fleet maintenance type applications. The ECM differs from what we commonly call the black box in an automobile. An automobile's black box, I need to start by explaining that, I believe.
Okay.
An automobile's black box that we commonly call it is called an airbag control module. That airbag control module has one sole purpose, and that is to make determinations on what's happening with the vehicle, whether it's in a crash or not. That's all it needs to know, is whether it's in a crash or not, or about to be in a crash or not, because its sole purpose is to deploy airbags, fire pretensioners for the seat belts, or things like that. Basically, things to protect the occupant. And because of that, it looks at a number of parameters, including vehicle speed, how quickly it's accelerating, whether there's impacts being felt, and it records a lot of information. When a crash occurs with an automobile that has airbags, that airbag control module, its sole purpose is to determine whether it needs to deploy airbags. As a secondary function, the airbag control module records that information, vehicle parameters, so we can use that it'll tell us how fast the vehicle may be going, whether the occupants are wearing seatbelts, what kind of steering they may be putting into their vehicles, that sort of thing. So it tells us a lot of information that's very useful for crash reconstruction. The difference in heavy vehicle engine control modules, such as tractor trailers and buses, is that's more of a maintenance device. So it's not set up to say, am I in a crash or am I not in a crash? It records what we call sudden deceleration events, particularly on the Cummins engine modules. It records what we call sudden deceleration event, where it detects that it's slowing down rapidly. On this particular bus, we discovered 3 sudden deceleration events. And of those 3, we determined based on the mileage of the bus and the mileage that was showing on the ECM, they're all very close together, probably within the last week prior to the crash. But unfortunately, as I was determining that and comparing it to the video analysis that I did, determined that the engine control module reports, the sudden deceleration reports, did not correlate with my crash information. So the ECM data that it gave me, it showed me that there are several instances where the vehicle sped up and slowed down rapidly, but none of them were related to my crash that I investigated on the 21st.
And obviously the bus came to a stop.
That is correct.
Why would the ECM not show zero deceleration?
There are a number of reasons. Most likely in this particular case, because the bus overturned, the engine control module is getting its speed directly from the transmission, from the rotation of the tires. As the vehicle in this particular case is out of control at the bottom of the hill, and again at the top of the hill, as he's at the top of the hill, he begins to start rolling over. And he's partially rolled over when he strikes the telephone pole, because at the front of the bus you'll see an indentation of about 45 degrees across the face of the bus. That's where it actually struck the telephone pole while it's partially rolled over, and then struck the tree when it's totally on its side. That vehicle is off, the tires are off the ground. The rear tires are still free to rotate, So as it's going over, the transmission and the drive line is not detecting a sudden deceleration. The tires are still spinning. In fact, we have witness information that the tires are still turning when they go on scene.
Okay.
So the tires never stop suddenly. So that's why the engine control module didn't detect a sudden deceleration. So because of that, the tires gradually slowed down, so it was a gradual slowdown. So it didn't record this particular event.
But we do have, you talked about the video evidence.
There is video evidence, yes, sir.
And were you able to identify Mr. Walker as the driver?
Yes, sir, I was.
All right. At any point of this video evidence, is he in possession or usage of a cell phone?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay. And your understanding of Tennessee law, school bus drivers should or should not have cell phones?
Once the first child boards the bus, they are not allowed to be accessing the cell phone, using the cell phone, touching it. State law is pretty specific about cell phone usage when it comes to bus drivers. And once the first child is on the bus, whether it's in motion or not, cell phone needs to be put away.
Are school buses equipped with dispatch ability?
That is correct. Yes, they are.
All right. Now, when you took the video evidence, what were your findings in regard to Mr. Walker's speed?
One thing I could do, just like how the GPS records a location, and then a particular set of time later, a second or two later, records another location. You can do the same thing with video analysis. On the camera that's mounted above the driver's head that looks out to the side of the roadway, I can identify different roads, driveways, sidewalks, telephone poles, and up to the point of the crash. And using known distances, which we measured, I can determine that he covered a certain number of feet in a certain number of seconds, was able to determine speed using time distance from the video as well.
All right. And you talked about those yaw marks, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir. Those side slip marks.
Tally Road, where were the yaw marks located that you found in regard to this case?
There were two sets that we observed. The first one that we noticed was at the bottom of the hill at Sunset Avenue, where the vehicle was rotating to its left because of side slipping action, because the turn is a right-hand turn, and as he's trying to negotiate that curve, the vehicle's got too much speed to safely negotiate that curve, so the tires begin to side slip and create yaw marks, which we identified and measured there on the roadway.
And based on the video evidence, what do you estimate? Were you able to estimate his speed as the yaw marks occurred?
I estimated the speed just right up to the point where the yaw marks begin to appear.
And what was that speed, sir?
Between 50 and 52 miles an hour.
All right. And 52 in this street, the speed limit's what?
30.
All right. But previous to the 30 miles an hour on Tally, is there any other roadway signs or any other
There
cautionary
are several
signs?
cautionary signs for these curves from 20 miles an hour.
Okay. All right. Now, so we have the ECM that appears not to have provided any accurate data or helpful data. Would that be fair to say?
Not for this particular crash, no, sir.
Okay. Video evidence, somewhere between 50 and 52, the yaw marks begin.
Right.
All right. Yaw marks begin, does he go off the side of the road?
That is correct.
On what side of the road?
He's rotating to the right. It starts to grab, and he's able to get over, and he ends up going over to the left side. He starts sliding to the left side, and it starts to grab, and it actually starts going off to the right side, overcorrects, and then goes back to the left where he rolls over and strikes the utility pole in the tree.
What portion of the bus struck this mailbox you're talking about?
There's a mailbox that got struck. He didn't actually strike the mailbox head on. The mailbox is off the roadway somewhat. As the vehicle starts to side slip to the right, it's also beginning to start to lift up and start the rollover action. And the rear portion of the bus actually caught that mailbox as it's sliding around.
All right. And so in sequence, yaw marks, the striking of the mailbox,
Yes, sir.
and then the utility pole,
Yes, sir.
and then the tree.
Yes, sir.
That would be the kind of the sequence. All
That
right.
would be correct.
Now, you talk about these reconstruction without electronic evidence. What were you able to determine from using that data about the speed right before the yaw marks were to occur?
We measured the roadway friction, the available friction on the roadway called drag factors, what we refer to in the reconstruction terms, how adhesive the roadway is. Investigator Cowan and Investigator Cabot work to get those measurements. And using those roadway drag factors, we measured a particular radius on the yaw marks. And using those numbers, we're coming up with what we would refer to as a minimum speed of about 48 miles an hour for those yaw marks.
And why do you say minimum speed?
Because this is not a complete yaw mark. A complete yaw mark, we have portions where we can take, we have a particular way to measure a complete yaw mark, and that will give us a much more accurate speed. Because it's just beginning to side slip, we can only use this as a minimum or guideline speed, and we're in the ballpark of 48 miles an hour from those minimum speeds. So it's not going to account for the entire amount of energy that's being lost in the side slip action.
Okay. And a complete yaw mark, is that because you didn't measure everything, or is there something missing, or what is it?
He doesn't have enough road to create a complete yaw mark. He runs out of road. He ends up going off road and into the tree and the utility pole. So if he had more roadway, if this action occurred on a parking lot, we'd have a complete yaw mark because the vehicle would continue to rotate around its axis.
All right. About how long are school buses? We know?
70 feet, 60 feet.
All right.
I've got a measure somewhere.
Are you able to tell without electronic aid and with electronic aid, in fairness, was there ever any braking that occurred?
No braking was occurred that we observed from the roadway evidence. Everything looked like it was steering input only, no braking input that we could determine from the roadway evidence.
In what part of are you the only one that participates in the reconstruction?
No, we work as a team.
All right. And there's parts of that are would be fair to say are ongoing.
That is correct.
And why is it ongoing?
There's a lot of data we have to look at. There's a lot of stuff we have to look at.
For instance, I believe a search warrant was obtained for his cell phone, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And I think that report's about 1,300 pages itself.
1,400, yes, sir.
And so you've not had a chance to go through all this stuff.
Yes, sir. Right.
Okay. Were you able to determine if there were any other vehicles on the roadway in this occurred?
There were witnesses that were in the general area, but no vehicles interacted with the bus as far as in the collision phase. This was all just the bus.
All right. The bus stopped or eventually stopped inside this tree, correct?
That is correct.
Is that in somebody's car or
That is
field?
correct. That is in the front yard of the address at 318 Tally Road.
At 318 Hill Road, okay. And across the street would be the mailbox.
That's correct.
Diagonally.
317 or I have to look.
So it'd be fair to say, as the yaw marks begin, the bus is traveling downhill?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, and then eventually travels uphill, off the road, on the road, and then finally stops.
That's correct.
Judge, you would just say?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Cross-examination.
Good morning, Deputy Warren. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your educational background. First of all, did you go to college, sir?
I did.
Okay. Where'd you go to school?
Several places. Chattanooga State, went to Tennessee Temple for a while until I got kicked out for making out with my wife. And then Word of Life Bible College up in upstate New York.
Did any part of your college studies relate in any way to the accident reconstruction that
No.
you're doing today? All right. Take any college physics courses? Any engineering courses?
Some math courses, but and some that were related to engineering, but not specific.
Are you ACTAR certified?
No, ma'am. I have not taken the ACTAR test just because I'm just way too busy.
Okay. And the ACTAR test would be the part of the accreditation commission for traffic accident reconstruction. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Is there anybody in the Chattanooga Police Department who is ACTAR certified?
No, man, we stay too busy.
As far as your training for accident reconstruction goes, can you explain that a bit for me?
Oh, how much time do you have? It's quite lengthy. I've started my training for accident reconstruction about 20 years ago. I guess it's 97, 98. Started my training for accident reconstruction, the basic accident reconstruction courses, advanced, and then there's a third level of accident reconstruction training. Heavy vehicle crash reconstruction, reconstruction involving pedestrians and that sort of thing. All these training classes through IPTM were most of the training classes. Training classes regarding preparing scale diagrams, electronic scale diagram measurements, Leica scan scale diagrams of total stations, all kinds of different vehicle dynamic type crashes, crash training. I've taught a number of classes up until probably about the mid-2000s, maybe late 2000s. I've taught several classes throughout the state of Tennessee regarding crash reconstruction. Authored a couple of articles in national magazines regarding crash reconstruction. Just a number of classes. I'd have to go through the list, and I've got a book that's about this thick that has a lot of the stuff I've done. I can't even remember half the stuff that I've been through as far as training, but been involved in crash reconstruction for nearly 20 years.
And in that time that you've been involved in crash reconstruction, how many of those reconstructions actually involved a school bus?
School buses for reconstruction, none. Reconstructed hundreds of fatality crashes over the years, involving heavy vehicles, tractor trailers, straight, big buses. School buses, I don't think I've worked any fatality school buses.
You mentioned that you've done other types of buses,
Right.
reconstructed.
And other straight trucks, like box trucks, which essentially when you talk about tires on the roadway, and the dynamics are very similar on like a straight bus or straight box trucks. You can motorcycle fatality crashes, train crashes, all kinds of stuff.
I guess the difference, though, between a box truck and a school bus would be the load, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And load certainly makes a difference when you're calculating these measurements that you discussed.
No.
Doesn't.
And the weight does make a difference, and the loading makes a difference. The cargo is huge with it. What we're dealing with, like for instance, a box truck. I've worked different crashes involving box trucks, and the loading actually and the weights actually end up being very similar. So there's not a huge difference on how some of that stuff applies. Depends how it's loaded. If it's heavily loaded, yeah, it's going to be a different weight that we're dealing with on a box truck versus a bus. If it's moderately to lightly loaded, we're dealing with very similar weights and very similar actions as far as vehicle dynamics. The cargo's different.
Let's talk a little bit about this accident. Mr. Pinkston indicated that there were a series of events beginning with a yaw mark at or near the Sunset intersection. Is that right?
That's right.
Now, after that, there were also a couple of events that we didn't discuss in detail. The first of those events was that the bus right side tire actually left the roadway. Is that right?
That is correct.
That bus tire then connected with a driveway on the right side of the road.
That's
Is that
correct.
right? Do you believe that the bus tires connecting with that driveway had any impact or effect on the dynamics of this accident?
As far as the rollover, for instance,
In any way?
it brought it back towards the left. But as far as causing rollovers, it was on the right, so you would think it'd make it roll over to the right, but it roll over to the left. But instead it rolled over to the right. It brought the vehicle back over to the left.
Brought it back onto the roadway.
Yes.
Now, nothing in your investigation can indicate necessarily why that bus left the roadway.
Yeah, excessive speed for the curve.
Well, you don't know if there were any other oncoming vehicles, do you?
He was struggling, because those tire marks are actually into the oncoming traffic.
But let's think about this though. Nothing in your investigation, not the video, not the measurements taken from the roadway, and not the witnesses, can tell you whether there was an oncoming vehicle that would have in any way made Mr. Walker swerve his vehicle.
Actually, we spoke with a witness that afternoon. She did not describe any vehicles coming towards her, and she was somewhat behind the bus.
Where was this vehicle located behind the bus?
I have to look at the interview and see. I don't remember.
Well, was she 2 feet behind the bus, or was she a quarter of a mile behind the bus?
I want to say somewhere between that. I don't know. I have to look.
So she would not necessarily have had the same vantage point as Mr. Walker with respect to oncoming traffic. Is that fair?
I'm sorry.
When did the actual accident reconstruction in this case begin?
That afternoon.
And what work was done that afternoon?
While they were still, the fire department was actually still working to extricate several of the children. Myself, Investigator Cowan, Investigator Cabot, actually measured on the roadway portions of the tire marks that we could see that weren't covered by firefighters and EMS, and we actually took some measurements right then, because I knew, based on my training and experience, I knew I was dealing with a vehicle that was going too fast, because I had a rollover for a bus that occurred on this roadway, and I know that rollover has to occur at higher speed than the posted speed because of the nature of how rollovers occur. I knew I was dealing with a speeding bus. I saw the tire marks, the foot marks. I saw how straight they were. I knew right off the bat I'm dealing with a bus that is going too fast. And so we actually conducted hand measurements prior to doing the laser scans that afternoon.
Did you make the determination as to the speed that the bus was traveling that afternoon as well?
Yep. Or at least a ballpark. Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so,
And the ballpark was pretty high, so I knew at that point, I knew I was dealing with a speeding bus, which is why I charged him that way.
let's talk about that a little bit. At what time was Mr. Walker taken into custody?
I don't know. As far as arrested or taken into custody?
What time was he taken into custody?
I mean, he was at the bus crash site for a period of time. One of our investigators, I believe Investigator Tommy Sider, transported him to the police station to get him away from all of this stuff so we could have a chance to talk to him. And then later that afternoon, later into the evening, after myself and Cowan and Investigator Cabot conducted some of those on-scene measurements so I'd have an idea of what to talk about, that's when I went back to try and interview Mr. Walker, and he declined to talk to me. And so that's when I was charging him. It was throughout that evening. I don't know the times. It's documented on the arrest report.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at the affidavit of complaint that was filed?
Yeah, that's every what time I arrested.
May I-
Yes, you may. I think they're all the same.
I believe
so if
they are.
I didn't.
Shows the time of arrest of 9:51 p.m. And that's probably the time that he was booked. I'm not positive which time that would be.
All right, so he had been actually taken into custody at some time prior to that,
That's correct.
possibly hours prior to that?
Possibly. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because you wanted him off the scene.
Right. Because I knew there'd be family there, and he did not need to be, I wanted to keep him separate from the families that would be there.
So you had conducted, you and your team, let's say, had conducted the initial measurements within a couple of hours
Yes, ma'am.
of arriving on scene,
Yes, ma'am.
and you made an initial determination to his speed, as to the speed he was
I
traveling.
knew I was dealing with just using ballpark numbers based on a ballpark. We hadn't done the roadway drag factor measurements yet. Just using the estimate would be an average drag factor for that roadway and using that radius. I knew right then I was dealing with at least in the upper 40s for speed. which in my mind I determined to be reckless for driving a large vehicle on that roadway.
Now, this accident occurred around 3:20 or 3:30 in the afternoon. Is that fair? Do you believe you began your measurements or your measurement taking around that time or
No.
later?
I was off that day. It's my first day off in a couple of weeks, and I was off that day, and I got notified by phone of the crash, and I got dressed and then went down there on the motorcycle. And I probably got there. I was probably on scene. I had to look at the crime scene logs maybe by the time I got called, probably about an hour after the crash occurred.
Should have been around 4:30 p.m.
I'm guessing.
Okay. Now, we know this accident took place on November 21 of 2016, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Started getting dark around 5 o'clock.
It's fair.
Okay.
5:35.
So you were out there with your team taking measurements and doing this accident reconstruction as it was getting dark.
It was still daylight when we took those first measurements, so, but yeah, we actually worked through the night. I didn't go home to go to sleep until Wednesday. Through the night.
There were also multiple emergency vehicles at the scene, correct?
That's correct.
That would include fire and EMS.
That's correct.
There were police vehicles at the scene, correct?
correct.
There were also independent investigators such as NTSB personnel.
They didn't show up until Tuesday morning.
So you began this investigation as it was getting dark with multiple vehicles on the scene.
We didn't actually do the scans for the vehicles on the scene. We couldn't do any of that until they left. What I did is a hand measurement with a cloth tape. There's a fire truck here, an ambulance here, and there was my tire mark that I observed, and just behind the fire truck, I was able to conduct that measurement without having to move fire personnel.
You did not have any other electronic evidence at that time, is that fair?
No.
Didn't have the videos pulled, didn't have the ECM data downloaded, or any of the GPS information, is that fair?
That's correct.
So at the time that Mr. Walker was taken into custody, you were operating on the rudimentary numbers you had taken out there that evening.
Yeah, they work. The numbers are the numbers. The yaw mark is very reliable piece of evidence. Sometimes we have only that type of evidence, and if that evidence is compelling, here's the thing you have to understand about the yaw marks. I've actually done testing and participated in testing, live crash testing, where we've created various tire marks at different industry-related events, INCRs, SCARs conferences. I did one in Biloxi where I was invited to speak down there. We've done all these different crash testing things where we've actually taken live vehicles, heavy vehicles, and other types of vehicles and created different tire marks with going in with known speeds and measured these tire marks and found out that using under basic rudimentary laws of physics, going back with that information is accurate. The stuff works. Understanding how a vehicle interacts with the roadway surface when it's out of control, when it's braking. Because of the live testing I participated in, I know that this math works. It's science. I don't know what to say.
So at the time that Mr. Walker was arrested, the basis for his arrest was based on primarily that yaw mark then.
Yes, correct. Yes, ma'am. I knew right then that I was dealing with high speed.
The yaw mark was enough.
And if that's all I had going to trial, I'd still be comfortable with it.
Now, in this case, we spoke briefly about the ECM,
Right.
correct? Now, who was actually responsible for downloading the data that was contained on the ECM?
Chattanooga Police Department was responsible for it.
Was the NTSB involved in any way in the downloading of this information?
Yes, ma'am, they were.
What was their involvement?
They have the technology to hook up to it. We have the technology to download and read automobiles. Heavy vehicles, because you have different manufacturers, you have Kenworth, you have Volvo, you have Cummins, you have Detroit Diesel, you have a number of different heavy vehicle modules to work with. Mac is a totally other animal. There's certain specialty equipment and software needed for that runs in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that, quite frankly, our department just can't afford right now. In fact, the state of Tennessee, THP, currently does not have the technology to download heavy vehicles. Oftentimes, we have to rely on an outside source, such as a private reconstruction company that has invested those hundreds of thousands of dollars into that equipment. We rely on them to download that stuff for us. In this case, the NTSB, they have that equipment, so they download it for us.
And so, in this particular case, did they actually download that information into an exemplar or a?
Yes, what we do, here's what you want to do. When you've got a heavy vehicle crash, it's an engine control module. So if you've got a check engine light on your car, for whatever reason, you got a wasn't a doodle that's broke, it's going to pop up your check engine light. Same thing's going to happen in a heavy vehicle, such as a tractor trailer bus. So what we want to do first of all is make sure that we're dealing with we want to use an existing bus that runs to mount this ECM to download. You have to mount it to the vehicle. It has to be connected to all the systems to be able to read it. Because our vehicle is crashed and disabled, we can't read it directly off of our vehicle. It needs to be a running vehicle. So what we'll do typically is we'll take that ECM to an exemplar vehicle, a sister clone vehicle. In this case, the other Thomas bus we used was off by just a couple of numbers on the last few digits of the VIN. So we're talking, came off the same assembly line, probably within the same day or two, basically. So we're using a sister clone vehicle. We want to first of all make sure that vehicle has no check engine lights. I'm trying to keep it simple. Make sure it has no engine codes or engine problems, because when you put our crash vehicle ECM onto that vehicle, it'll transfer those engine codes onto our crash vehicle data, and we don't want that. So we take, so we make sure that it's got no engine codes, then we can put our crash ECM onto that exemplar vehicle and then read it from there. And that's what we did in this case. Made sure that vehicle had no ECM codes, so we got a copy of both the exemplar vehicles, ECM read, and then our crash vehicles, ECM read.
When was the ECM device actually removed from the bus in this case?
Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday. I have to look. It's probably on the warrants. I don't remember. That was a long week.
Now, as you mentioned previously, this ECM was manufactured by Cummins, Inc., correct?
The engine control module is based on what engines comes in that vehicle. In this particular case, we're dealing with a Cummins diesel power plant.
So the way that the Cummins ECM operates is that it provides a sudden deceleration report.
That's what's most useful for crash. It provides a bunch of reports. What's most useful for crash reconstruction is the sudden deceleration report.
And what the Cummins ECM does is it maintains the last 3 sudden deceleration events on that module, correct?
That's correct.
So when you download that information, you actually get 3 separate reports.
That's correct.
And those are for 3 different times when there's been a sudden deceleration of
That's correct.
And in this case, you actually pulled those 3 reports. Is
That's
that
correct.
correct? You reviewed those 3 reports?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, with the Cummins ECM, it doesn't actually have like a date or a timestamp on it, does it?
No.
What it does is it tracks the mileage, right?
Mileage and ECM hours. How many hours that the key has been on for the engine control on.
And so, in this particular case, presumably, you would want to look at the last deceleration event that occurred mileage-wise and time-wise, correct?
Yeah, that would be the correct way to go. And that would be typically let's just put it that way.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
All right, Mr. Warren, I'm going to stand up here with you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so these are, do you recognize these as the 3 deceleration reports that
I do, yes,
came off of this ECM? All right, so when we look here at vehicle sudden deceleration report record number 1, the occurrence distance, or the mileage there, 58,130.1.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
When we look at report number 2, set mileage 58,130.6.
That's correct.
Right.
I'll be correct with that.
And then vehicle report 3 actually occurred before these, and that was at 58,118. Okay. So out of the 3 of these reports, vehicle sudden deceleration report record number 2 was the last one in time.
That's correct.
All right. Let's focus on that one, please.
All right.
This vehicle sudden deceleration report, what these reports actually do is they capture a 0 mark as the sudden deceleration event, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so looking at that sudden deceleration event, it goes back in time for 1 minute, right?
Yes, ma'am. 60 seconds and 15 seconds post.
15 seconds post. So what it gives you is how fast they were going the minute before, and then where it was 15 seconds after that sudden braking event, right?
Right.
Okay. When we look here at the sudden deceleration record number 2, we go to our 0 point, the speed at which that vehicle was traveling at the time that the braking event occurred. What was that 0 point?
That shows 34 miles an hour for that.
And as you go back, let's say on this page, it goes back 23 seconds. The highest speed there would have been 37.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
All right. And then we can see here, also on this report, it shows us the brake status, right?
Right. Whether it's with brakes on or off. Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so it shows that at 10 seconds, 9 seconds, 8 seconds prior, the brakes were activated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then again, here at the 0 point, brakes are on through that whole 15 seconds after, right?
Right.
If we were to rely upon vehicle sudden deceleration report record number 2, it would indicate the highest speed the bus was traveling prior to the accident was 37 miles per hour.
No, the highest speed traveling for this sudden deceleration report. It doesn't, and we know it's before the accident by a number of miles. We don't know that.
Fair enough. That number that's contained on that deceleration report is not consistent with your measurements and the yaw marks. Is that fair?
Right. It's also not consistent with my crash information that day. If you want to bring it back, I'll show you why that one was ruled out. If you would like. The top of the page, it records various parameters because it's all about engine control, how to control the engine. One thing that's important for a diesel or gas operated engine, a combustion engine, is air temperature, because it knows, you know how much fuel you put into the system. Top of the page, you'll see air temperature, outside air temperature at occurrence is 62 degrees. The highest the temperature got the day of the crash was 56. So I don't believe that this is going to relate to my crash just off of that alone. But also knowing the video, when I line up the video with an ECM report, I can see my video, my ECM events just don't occur at the same time.
Well, let's talk about the video then for a minute. And Your Honor, I guess I would make this exhibit number 4.
Okay, yes. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about the video. You mentioned that there were 3 different camera views on this particular bus, correct? One of the views is at the back of the bus, like if you were standing at the back door looking forward.
That's correct.
Similarly, there is a camera at the front of the bus that would be as if you were standing at the front of the bus looking at the back door.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And the third camera view is mounted over the almost over the driver's shoulder.
That's correct.
That looks at the door where the children enter onto the vehicle.
That's correct.
All right. Now, it's your testimony that utilizing these 3 camera views, you were able to see portions of the roadway?
Now, utilizing the camera, the last one you just described, it's over his shoulder or over his head, looking out to the side. I used that because I was able to identify portions of the roadway and use that for a video analysis. Yes, ma'am.
And I've seen this video as well. It was a sunny day on November 21st, wasn't it?
Sunny? Yes, ma'am.
When you look at that video, or at least the video that I've seen, you can tell that it's sunny outside the window, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it obscures what you can see outside the window to some extent, doesn't it?
The video that I have, and I'm trying to figure out how to get what I did, the last video I used for speed analysis, the video you have in possession, I'm trying to get a copy to you because that's actually a slightly different copy. The copy you have cuts off 1 minute prior to the crash. As he's going around the corners, the sun becomes in a different position. And what you're talking about, what you're describing early on Tally Road, is Tally Road is a really curvy road, so the sun's in different positions. As he gets to the point where the crash is occurring, the sun's in a different position. You can actually identify objects on the side of the road very easily.
And what are those objects that you identified?
Driveways, sidewalks, telephone poles, Sunset Drive, up to the point of the crash.
Are there any mailboxes or other identifying features that would number those driveways?
No, I can just identify them by going out there physically to the scene. I go up to the point of the crash. I know whether y'all know where that's at. And just simply walking backwards with the video, I see it, and there's Sunset Avenue. There's that sidewalk I saw. Here's those 2 utility poles standing right next to each other. Here's this driveway. Here's the next road, going all the way back as far as Gillespie or wherever you want to go to, Gillespie Rogers, then Pilot, all that.
All right. So you're relying on basically your hand measurements in comparison?
No, actually, these are measurements from the scanner. We scanned all the way to the top of the hill beyond Sunset Boulevard. We scanned all the way to the top of the hill. And trying to remember the name of that road at the top of the hill. It's not Midland Pike. It's another road prior to that, Howard or something like that. I have to look up. I used to patrol that district. I should know, but I can't remember.
Is it Rogers?
I don't think it's Rogers. I have to look.
And so, but you, just so I'm clear, you used the Leica scanner to make this determination?
A combination of both the Leica scanner. We did the roller tape with a roller wheel just to get some ballpark numbers, and the Leica scanner provides us our more accurate numbers.
Now, you spoke earlier about Mr. Walker being in possession of a cell phone.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. You can see that clearly on the video.
All right. On which video?
The one over his shoulder. You can see him holding it up, see a text message screen, kids are on the bus, he's coming around talking about kids. Cell phone's still up, there's a different screen this time. One's a text message screen, one's another screen, I wasn't sure what it was. I'm not young at hip, so I'm not, could have been Instagram or something like that. I don't know.
Well, but let's talk about when this happened in time. So the video actually shows all 3 views, the children getting on the bus at the school. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the children loaded onto the bus and they started taking their seats, correct?
Right.
And the bus started to depart from the school, and then a child went to the front of the bus. Is that right? And it appeared that that child asked Mr. Walker to get off the bus.
I don't know what he said. I didn't really review that end of the video myself. I was more interested towards the end of it for the reconstruction purpose. So I've seen it, but I don't remember why.
Well, you recall that a child got off the bus at some point, correct? It was during this time when that child was off the bus that Mr. Walker was looking at a phone. Is that right?
It's very possible.
Okay, bus wasn't moving, was it? Bus
There are
was,
children on board. Yes, ma'am.
right, the bus was stationary. The bus was in the park, correct? Is that a yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Child had gotten off the bus, and it appears the child was off the bus for approximately 2 minutes. Is that correct?
I'll take your word for it. I didn't review that end of it.
Then Child gets back on the bus, doesn't he?
Okay.
Okay. At that point, you can see from the video that Mr. Walker stops using the phone. Correct?
Or it comes out of view, because it just shows the barely top of his head. The only reason I can see the phone is because he's holding it up.
And then you see phone go down like this, Mr.
You
Walker.
see it come below the view of the camera.
And at that point, the vehicle is engaged and begins to drive out of the parking lot of Woodmore Elementary School, correct?
Sounds right.
Since you had an opportunity to view the end of the video, you also got to see the aftermath of the accident, correct? Do you agree with me that Mr. Walker got out through the front windshield of the bus?
Yes, ma'am.
He was assisting children. He assisted at least 2 children that I saw to get off the bus, didn't he?
Yes, ma'am. After he, yeah, what I observed, and I don't know how much counsel and the court wants to go into on detail on the video. The videos, I'll preface everything with this. The videos are very disturbing, okay? And I don't want to describe a whole lot.
Well, and that's why I'm asking just if you could limit your answer to answering my question then. You saw him help 2 children off the bus, right?
Yes, ma'am.
When you look at the rear side, you can see that Mr. Walker ran around the bus, right?
Yes, ma'am.
He got onto the rear of the bus,
Yes, ma'am.
and it looks like he attempted to give some kind of aid at the rear of the bus.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Before departing the bus.
Yes, ma'am.
And it was at that point then that emergency crews had arrived and began to get on the bus.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
All right. If I could have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
Briefly, Investigator 1, is it possible at all that the yaw marks that's left in that roadway was related to the bump of the driveway?
There's no bump prior to the yaw mark at the bottom of the hill of Sunset Avenue.
One other thing you mentioned on direct examination was that you did not believe the bus had braked at any point.
No, ma'am. I didn't see any indication of braking from the roadway areas.
There were also tire marks in the side of the road, aren't there?
Right.
And just to be clear for the court's benefit, this road doesn't really have a shoulder, does it?
It does not.
It's a narrow road, and it goes from roadway to yard.
That's
Right.
correct. Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible the bus could have braked?
Well, not all 6 tires were off the roadway in the grass. And braking on the grass is has a distinctive look to it versus side slipping in the grass and furrowing in the grass. On the grass, I saw where the vehicle went off. It did not indicate to me that there's braking in the grass, as well as the tires that remain on the roadway do not create braking marks. And I did not observe braking marks on the scene.
Nothing further this time around.
Any redirect? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You may step
That's
in.
the case for probable cause.
Okay. Ms. Dunn, do you have any proof at this point in time?
No, this time, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay.
Sister.
Yes, you may step down, and I don't know where the DA wants you to sit, or you may have a seat in the courtroom or be excused. Okay. Thank you. In general, I will hear any argument you have at this point in time.
I think there's 5 charges of vehicular homicide, court there's another that died, both successful, they will address that grand jury, but I think for probable cause purposes, establish reckless behavior on behalf of Mr. Walker that was operating a motor vehicle that resulted in the death of 5 children and 6 children and other children that were.
Ms. Dunn.
Your Honor, as you know, Investigator Warren testified as to his preliminary investigation in this matter, but he's also indicated that the investigation in this matter is not complete. I believe that there is evidence that has been submitted to the court that would suggest that there are differing versions of what may have occurred on Tally Road on that date, particularly with respect to the speed at which this bus was traveling. Your Honor, for a vehicular homicide charge to be bound over the grand jury, Your Honor has to believe that there's probable cause that he was operating this vehicle recklessly, meaning that he consciously disregarded a substantial and unjustifiable risk that circumstances existed or that sudden or serious bodily injury or death could occur. I don't believe that we have any testimony that Mr. Walker was consciously disregarding risks that existed. We don't know if there were vehicles oncoming towards him. There's a whole lot that we don't know at this time. So, Your Honor, we would ask that if Your Honor is inclined to bind these cases over to the grand jury, that Your Honor consider lesser included offenses that could be bound over.
Thank you. In this case, the 5 charges of vehicular homicide are found in TCA 3913-213. Vehicular homicide is the reckless killing of another by operation of, in this case, a motor vehicle, as the proximate result of conduct creating a substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury. In this case, I do find that there was death. There was death to 6 children, 5 of whom have been charged. I do find the conduct to be reckless. It clearly can be seen from Exhibit 3, the diagram, that there was a conscious disregard for the risk in this case. And so I find that the element of recklessness has been established by the state, and I will bind those 5 cases over to the grand jury. With regard to case number 1649046, he is charged with the crime of reckless endangerment. That is found in 3913-103. Reckless endangerment, a person commits an offense who recklessly engages in conduct that places or may place another in imminent danger of death. In this case, I do find that the conduct of Mr. Walker did result in the death of these children, and therefore that will be bound over to the grand jury. In case number 1649047, he is charged with the crime of reckless driving. That is found in TCA 5510-205. In that case, it requires that any person who drives any vehicle in willful or wanton disregard for the safety of persons or property commits reckless driving. Certainly, driving in a speed of excess of 30 miles per hour. In this case, the officer testified to at least 48 miles per hour, I think was his testimony as written. And in some situations, I think he recorded it may be 52 miles per hour. Between 50 and 52 miles an hour is clearly way over the speed limit of 30 miles per hour. And so I do find probable cause to believe that he has committed the offense of reckless driving, and that will also be bound over to the grand jury. Now, once a case is bound over Mr. Walker, I must determine if the bond set was appropriate. Is there any argument at this point in time that needs to be made regarding the bond, or is it adequate as said?
None from the state.
Okay, and Ms. Dunn, do you have any argument at this point in time?
We would simply ask that the bond remain the same, Your Honor.
Okay. These cases will be bound over to the grand jury on the bond previously set. Since the state has not moved to increase the bond, I find at this point in time that the bond will remain the same, and these cases will be bound over to the grand jury. Thank you, Mr. Walker. You may step back.
I'll say that may be excused, doesn't it?
Yes, and I will need somebody to stop the recording. Yes.